Jeremy, Alora, nice to meet you. First, I want to ask, how did this game come about, internally?
Oh man, that's a story for
That's a
sure.
perfect question for you, Jeremy.
Yeah, I'm actually the second longest tenured dev on the game. I've seen the project all the way from prototype all the way to where it is today. The game started out really with the game director, Tom Chilton, was playing a ton of Clash Royale and Puzzles with Dragons, and really enjoying the PvP of Clash and really enjoying the PvE of Puzzles versus Dragons. And we kind of thought of a bunch of different gameplay ideas that kind of centered around that gameplay. And so we started exploring with a prototype. Kind of really early on, the whole high ground, low ground, and RPS, rock, paper, scissors mechanic kind of presented itself. And then it was about us building content out for that really cool system that we had discovered was like really fun to actually play within. And then came the second hurdle of when you're in mobile games, the core gameplay loop, actual putting units down on the ground, fighting towers, fighting bosses, that stuff is super fun. But that is 50% of the game. The other 50% of the game is like the UI that you're inside of, like the rewards that you're getting, the choices that you're making outside of gameplay. And so that came a little bit later for us, and we kind of had to intermesh those two things, both the moment to moment gameplay with the kind of meta game that kind of wraps Warcraft Rumble together, and been polishing it ever since.
So it's also an interesting concept just in general, because when I played it, it reminded me a lot of the tower defense days, right? But it has a little more detail than just running down a lane and just killing things and hitting a button every 30 seconds. There's more, you have definitely more strategy to that. Can you talk about how your team went about designing to make sure it was a deeper game than just basic tower defense?
I think that came in a lot of different waves. The really cool thing about working on this game team, especially with these really incredibly talented designers, is that we have, especially between art and design, an extremely collaborative relationship on this game team. Sometimes design goes, hey, we have a mechanic that we really want to, feature or highlight in the game, but we don't have a character. We need a character to kind of represent that. Sometimes we go into it and we're like, hey, we got this character that's really great and really familiar from the Warcraft universe, and we want to make sure we have a really cool mechanic to kind of link up with it and make sure that the lore also works with that mechanic. So we come at it from two different angles, but the depth and complexity component really started with kind of rock, paper, scissors. It got ratcheted up a level further with the kind of high ground and low ground. And then so we're talking about the strategic depth of the game. There's strategic depth in where you place the characters and at what time you place them, right? And that's kind of at its base level. But then there's this whole meta strategy of choosing the right army for the right mission, or choosing the right leader for the right situation that you're about to go into. And that's where the game gets really fun, where you start to kind of feel like a tactician in a lot of ways, where you're like, oh, okay, I can solve this problem with Baron Rivendare, or I can solve this problem with Charlga, or something like that. And once you start adding talents into the mix, which are these three modifiers that change the way every single one of our units plays, it's this exponential now combination of different things you can do in your army. And it just creates these really interesting emerging gameplay moments where you're just oh wow, you have these I like to call our game an aha moment generator.
Mm-hmm.
Where you're just playing it, it's a puzzle, you're stuck on it, and then you're wait, if I just use this one talent, I bet I can make an appreciable difference. And that normally happens.
Oh man,
so
100%.
Kind of multi-layered.
100%. I just want to echo that kind of aha moment and sort of reference one that I've actually experienced pretty recently. So there is a level in our game where there are these kind of wild banshees. And I call them wild because they're just sort of running around in the map and being a menace. And the banshee unit will fly over to the nearest unit once it's in range and overtake it and basically swap its allegiance, which is an awesome kind of trap that you can spring, especially if you see that your opponent has placed some super expensive unit, and then you can just go and sort of put your little banshee down and steal it. Horribly heartbreaking when it's used against you. But so within this level, we had these kind of wild banshees flying around. And I had this aha moment to use the angry chickens against them, which are this sort of low-cost, super aggro group of chickens and I thought, oh, I'm going to place the chickens and sort of sacrifice one to the banshee, and then so the banshee consumed a chicken, and then the rest of the chickens just pecked the hell out of the traitorous chicken to death. And that was like a little aha moment that completely changed how I approached that level. Now, instead of being like, oh man, I have to deal with this banshee and it's going to eat one of my expensive dudes, I now have like a strategy, and I look forward to seeing it and feel more satisfied by it. So like to Jeremy's point, there's all kinds of opportunities. Often there's sort of like, there might be like one or two units that when you kind of realize like, wait a minute, I can use them in this way, it completely opens up the board for you. For example, like at one point I discovered the synergy between this unit called Harpies, who are this sort of group of extremely aggro bird people. And I'm talking about lots of aggro creatures, to be honest. I'm just like a beast fan, and I really like the creatures that are super aggressive and just peck things to death, apparently. Birds, and I'm not sure why there's a theme there. Anyway, so the Harpies will fly around and just like kick the hell out of things. But we have this spell called Cheat Death, which will make it so that when it's applied to a group of minis, will make it so that they can't actually die for like a certain period of time. So when you combine this with Harpies, you get some basically almost invincible Harpies for just a few precious seconds, which can be just what you need to just burn the final few ticks of the boss's HP. And so there's just so many opportunities for one to be able to experiment and find out different things that work.
This franchise is over. The franchise is over 30 years old. Very popular. Started in '94, all the way to now, and still going strong. But when you folks were designing the game and making it, how did you decide what was going to be included? Like certain characters, locations. Helmador and the Eastern Kingdoms are big maps, and you're on a mobile device. Like how did you decide what characters, what units made the cut, what locations made the cut, and what were going to be maybe future projects or just cut from the design floor?
I tell this story that the franchise leader of Warcraft is this guy named John Haidt, and he threw us the keys to the Ferrari, and we got to do donuts in the parking lot and really just play inside of Azeroth and the Warcraft universe. And so when you're kind of given that really, in my estimation, privilege, you pick the stuff that you like and you have the strongest kind of like memory draw too. There are obviously characters and heroes in the Warcraft universe that lots of people are very, very familiar with, your Arthuses and your Jaina's and all that other stuff. Like there's a lot of great stuff to draw from, but we also wanted to give a little bit of kind of like limelight to some of the smaller quest givers too. Like Goldtooth is in Elwyn, the first zone of the game. And just like, he was just a regular quest giver out in front of Fargo Deep Mine in Elwyn. For the longest time, most people killed him and didn't think too much about him. But we wanted to give him like a little bit more backstory, a little bit more of kind of like, who is Goldtooth? Gave him like a really nice big fat gold tooth in his mouth, which I don't believe he had in WoW. And I don't know, just tried to flesh out some of that stuff so that we could have a good balance because when everything is epic, nothing is epic. You have to have that balance between the big and the small to really appreciate those kind of differences. So that's what we tried to do. And then also lean into the nostalgia. I grew up playing WoW. I got the Warcraft 2 battle chest for good grades. I copied those Metzen and Sam Didier drawings out of those manuals at my lunch period in 7th grade. And it was just such a trip. Sam worked on the project for a number of years together with me, and just getting to learn from him, and just that whole moment of going from just a kid admiring the Warcraft world to being able to create a game inside of it is just incredible privilege for all of us working on the game.
Game producers have a lot to manage. Can you what do you think is the biggest misconception about your job that like a regular public consumer doesn't understand or misunderstands?
I really love this question because often a question that I am asked by just anybody who ever comes to know me is, what do you actually do?
What do you do?
Honestly, I think it depends on where you are as a game producer, or like with what company you're at, or with what team, what culture, the people that you work with. I think that largely the main kind of underlying backbone of the production role is flexibility and the ability to do whatever is needed to kind of drive things forward. What is the kinds of things that people need? And it might be something as simple as like, hey, we need like an army of sticky notes to track like all the little things that we want to do, or we just need to have the right people in a room and have a conversation about something, or there's ambiguity around this idea. How do we hammer it out, and how do we kind of like sharpen our swords? And so production is this kind of just this big facilitation role. In fact, I find it kind of challenging to say like extremely specific things that that one producer can expect to do compared to another, because again, it is within that spirit of like facilitation. And so it's less kind of like the tools and specific things that a producer might use. Like, for example, like an artist will have their kind of tablets and their pencils and their pens, and you know, a tech artist, also kind of more of a generalist, will have like the engine, and they'll be working in a lot of prefabs and that sort of thing. A producer can work within that space, or they can be, you know, fully just in spreadsheets, just trying to map things out and make things all fit. So in terms of misconceptions, I'm not really sure what the misconceptions are, apart from perhaps not super knowing exactly what it is we do, but that's okay, because we're also kind of like trying to make it up as we go along in some cases as well. So it's okay.
I do want to talk about a little bit for at some point in this weird, crazy world, people started to side-eye mobile games. This was not a thing when the iPhone came out for like a few decades, but it's become more of a thing. And I really want you folks to elaborate like the challenges of making a game on a mobile device and how difficult it can be from an art standpoint, from a producer standpoint, the multiple phones, the multiple screen sizes, multiple chips, multiple processors, multiple makers, you know, the different stores in different countries. Like it's a big process. Can you kind of elaborate on the difficulties of making a mobile game and how it can be right up there, but just as hard as a AAA, you know, PC title?
The technological challenges are certainly difficult, for sure. I think in the early days, we were a bunch of PC devs making a mobile game, and we made some early mistakes in that regard. But we smartened up and ended up hiring a lot of people that had shipped mobile games in the past, and we learned a ton from those people. Like one of the early, you know, learnings, like, you know, coming into this, making this game as PC devs, we're focused on FPS. Like, oh, we got to make sure we get as many frames per second out to people as possible so that it's a smooth experience. But really, FPS is not the measure of success on mobile. It certainly is a byproduct of it. 100% you want a high level of FPS in your mobile game, but heat and battery life are kind of like the two main drivers of a lot of those different things. So that drives a lot of decisions that we made on the technological side of things, just with, like, you know, the complexity of the characters and the rigs and how many batches we can do inside of the game, all sorts of that other stuff. But we also like took a look at the format, right? Like the phone is a mobile device. It fits in one hand. I believe that there are certain format of types of games that work well in that format. I find that more immersive games, for my like more narrative driven games that like I have to pay attention to a movie or listen to the sound, which is not something a lot of us do on mobile phones. It's hard to get that immersion while I'm on that kind of mobile device. But I pick up my phone and play Rumble all the time, like in between, you know, like doing all meetings, all sorts of other stuff. But the cool thing about the game is that we're offering both a casual, quicker experience if you want to do like a real quick quest or like do a campaign mission or something like that, and then a real deep, like, let me sit down and like maybe I'm gonna play this on an iPad, not my iPhone right now, and raid with my buddy and see if we can knock down the first wing of the raid or something like that. So we're trying to kind of balance the gameplay sessions across the game quite a bit too. Laura, curious to hear what you have to say as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is an awesome question. I think there's a lot of challenges that come with developing on mobile, but as a team, I think that with Rumble, we definitely focused on kind of gameplay first. So I know that like over the course of our kind of development, folks really concentrated on the core gameplay loop. I remember when I was like first coming onto the team, or actually I remember playing this game for the first time and not being on the team yet. And I picked it up and I was playtesting it. And I remember being so blown away by like the visuals. I thought, this is so fun. It is so cool. The art is awesome. The silhouettes are completely iconic. And there was that obviously, you know, Warcraft universe kind of hook. And I remember just playing it and kind of like being completely immersed for the duration of the playtest. And then I remember being brought into the project and starting to work on the actual team, and thinking, what do you need now? What does this need anymore? Like, this is done. we're good. We got a game. Okay. And so I think that like the team really put gameplay first, absolutely, in terms of like focusing on the fun and making sure that the loop was good, making sure that the rock paper scissors mechanics were like tight, and making sure that, you know, we had enough kind of pieces that all fit together to create this awesome cohesive whole. So for like to talk about one of the things that I actually really enjoy, it might be kind of simple, but I love the campaign so much. It's like this handcrafted single player experience. And it has, you know, our extensive cast of Warcraft characters. You've got Grommash, you've got Maiev, you've got Karen, and you've even got kind of like characters that are either completely new to Rumble or sort of lesser known, like, you know, like Goldtooth. And we even have Chef Audrey, who is this like undead chef who is like cooking up some nasty old brew, and you have to go and beat her up. So like you can go and see all these different things and go through Azeroth in over the just something as simple as like as your phone, which is really, really nice. And I found myself getting really immersed as I was playing it. Each map in the campaign is its own puzzle, and it's this like long-term goal that you can complete at your own pace. And it is something that I particularly crave from games in general, having like a robust kind of single player experience. But to support that as well, we also have our PvP feature. And a thing that I particularly enjoy about PvP in particular is we have this concept of a tumbling meta. So you'll have like within a season, you'll have a rotating map and a rotating tower and a rotating modifier. And a modifier is basically just like a gameplay kind of change that will completely alter the dynamic of a given level sort of feel. And that might look like an increased gold accrual rate, or it might look like something like your minis leveling up every single time you play them, or something like that. And that basically means with this tumbling meta that a deck that was effective within 1 week may not be as effective in another week and another week, and so on and so on. So things are continuously fresh. And all of this kind of harkens into that like gameplay first feeling of like, we really wanted it to be this like fun experience that everybody can pick up and enjoy.
Jeremy, any pressure drawing, like having to design these characters for mobile? I mean, you have your Arthuses and your Fordrings, of course, but then you also have your like headhunters and like your footman soldiers, iconic designs that people have recognized for 30 years. Any pressure when having designed those characters in the game?
Ton, 100%. Thankfully, we have an incredible art team. Like, they are, you know, obviously every art director's proud of their team, but they are truly world-class artists. You know, specifically when you talk about our characters, we have Joe Keller. Joe and I worked together on World of Warcraft for a number of years, and Joe was a very early artist on the project. He just understands Warcraft through and through. And so we were in very capable hands with the crew that we ended up bringing over. I'm a firm believer that Blizzard makes the best Warcraft cinematics in the world. Like, our cinematics team is just incredible, and it's been a super fun experience working with them as well too. We worked with them on both our announced cinematic and another piece that we have coming up shortly, and it's just been a dream to kind of work with them. And, you know, like I said, they make the best out there. But sure, there was definitely some pressure to make sure we got it right 100%. But we also wanted to make sure too that Warcraft Rumble had its own identity, and that when you looked at a footman from Rumble, you didn't necessarily confuse it with one that you might have seen in Hearthstone, or one that you might have seen in World of Warcraft. And so we tried to carve out our own identity, but also be, you know, faithful to our source material. Very much so.
I asked this to Sam too when I interviewed Samwise, but like, you know, do you have the discussion about like how big is too big for the shoulder pads and how small is too small for the shoulder pads?
Bigger.
Well, if you ask Samwise, he'll say there is no too big. There is a too big though, because I'm going to come at it from the animator's perspective. When you're an animator, right, and Grom needs to raise his arms and he's got massive shoulder pads, what do those shoulder pads do? They clip right through your head. Right, so we have to do quite a bit of kind of shoulder pad manipulation to make sure they work. But I am pro shoulder pads. very much so. I think it's very iconic part of the kind of Warcraft silhouette, just in general, that Sammy established so many years ago. So, I mean, it works.
Now, you folks talked about dungeons, campaign, PvP, and raids, but the thing that ties those all together is the reward system. Can you folks talk a little about the reward system and how the player will be rewarded in what way? Cosmetics, currency, that kind of stuff.
Oh my goodness, all of the above. All of the above. One of the great things about Rumble is the more you play, the more rewards that you get, and every reward feeds into this kind of theme of progression and collection and expansion. And for example, like as you play through the campaign and you collect sigils, which are kind of like our sort of mainline progression, that will sort of allow you to unlock more features as you progress through it. You'll be given minis to choose from. You can pick them. You'll be given leaders to choose from. You can go ahead and pick whatever one you kind of gravitate towards. So we're always kind of giving out minis, and every time you get a mini, you increase your collection level. And once you kind of accrue enough progress towards your collection level, your entire level up will occur for your specific kind of account, and that comes with it increased, quest experience. It comes with it gold. It comes with it like basically various rewards that will make it so that you can continue to expand your collection and increase things. Obviously, as your units get stronger, you gain more access to be able to overcome harder levels. For example, we have our heroics with the challenge with the increased kind of difficulty. And when you take on a heroic, you are rewarded for every single family that you complete a heroic level on. And when you beat a heroic map with all 5 of our families, you get another reward too. And also with the concept of kind of talents and rarity, as you kind of get more and more minis, you'll have the opportunity to increase the rarity of these minis. And what'll happen there is they'll get a bonus level up, they'll unlock talents, and talents completely change how things feel for a given unit at any time. For example, a talent that I particularly enjoy is one of Baron Rivendare's, which his passive is that he continuously summons these little skeleton dudes from your kind of home territories, so your towers, or I'm not even sure if he summons it from meeting stones, but he actually might. And so they'll just continuously summon and march up and go and kick some bum. But he has a talent that'll make it so that any nearby skeleton, including the ones that he summons and ones that you place, will be bloodlusted. So that in our game, that will mean kind of increased speed and increased attack power. So that means like, oh man, I want to play even more skeletons now. Like that'll change kind of like how things feel. So essentially every single kind of thing that you can get in Rumble will all feed into that progress. Everything will feed into it in some way, no matter what you do.
We have a bunch of cosmetics as well too, so that you can kind of like personalize and express yourself. We're offering kobold skins as well as tower skins. Kobold's your kind of minor character that you have to protect, make sure they get the income for you to accelerate theirs or deny the AIs or your enemies, depending on if you have a safe pilot in your deck or not. But yeah, we're super excited for all of that stuff. We'll also be able to unlock new minis, just like you can right now in Sigil Road. You'll be able to do that through the war chest screen, which is the kind of shared guild rewards. And I may be biased, but I feel like our emotes are incredible. And
they are incredible.
The world has not seen them yet, but they're very, very fun. And we're leaning into some cheeky stuff. So I'm excited to see how the playing community uses them, because I'm sure they're going to be used in a different way that like everybody finds meaning in things every time. So it'll just be really interesting to see how these emotes are used in actual play.
I look forward to which ones are taken away because they're toxic. Those are the ones that I want to.
Hopefully none. Hopefully none.
Hopefully
will be taken away.
Hopefully none.
So my last question is, over the weekend I saw the news that you folks are doing some crossovers with World of Warcraft with like toys inside the realm. But speaking of toys, like this art style and the stuff that I've seen lends itself so well to a physical version of your game in statue form. Any plans for that? I know it's outside the game design space, but if it's at BlizzCon, I might have to buy a pack if there's like a bunch of them there.
It's definitely feedback that we've heard, Greg, for sure. People definitely love the toys. There's actually a really cool thing going on right now that's Mini Mondays. So we're actually offering up the STLs for all the minis in the game. So if you do have a 3D printer, you can print them. But yeah, we've certainly discussed the idea of toys and other physical representations of things. We don't have anything to really discuss right now, but it's certainly something that we've thought about and we're definitely looking into 100%.
I can never have too many versions of Arthas. So like any more versions.
How many? Oh, you have the Hearthstone one too. That was a nice one back there.
Yeah. I have another shelf here beside me. You can't see that has like all a bunch of figures and stuff. I don't think it was McFarlane, but your Warcraft line from like decades ago.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. The plastic ones, the clear plastic.
Yeah. All right, folks. So last thing is, when does Warcraft Rumble come out, and what platforms will it be on at launch?
Comes out on November the 3rd at BlizzCon, and it will be available on all mobile devices. So I hope that everyone can jump in and rumble with us and have fun collecting stuff, playing and sharing your tactics and sharing your strategies. We really can't wait to see like what the world at large thinks about our game. We're so excited for people to play, honestly.
Perfect. Yeah, this is the best part of game dev, really, is like when the devs get to see other people playing their game. That's the most satisfying for us.
Because the years of work. Yeah, the years of work. I mean,
yeah. And that's why BlizzCon is so special to us. The team is really just so super excited to just go interact with the fans and just, answer questions and, play the game with everybody else who's going to be playing it at BlizzCon. We're stoked.